Welcome back to the Around the Diamond podcast with your host, Sam Edwards, episode 230, the podcast for the baseball nerd. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode. It's going to be a fantastic episode. I can feel it. Top 10 second base list. It's quite the complicated list and very interesting this year. I also have a fantastic guest on today. He is the co-host on the Baseball is Dead podcast. He is a baseball statistics researcher. He is a fantastic baseball personality. JayHay, Justin Havens. Justin, dude, thank you so much for joining me on this podcast, dude. I really appreciate it.
Hey, it's my pleasure. Looking forward to doing the Around the Diamond pod. Let's do it.
Yeah, it's gonna be good. It's gonna be good. I think, as far as I can tell so far. Who knows?
Yeah.
We'll see. First off, on the docket, before we get to these top 10 lists, a guy that might come up later in the pod. Who knows? Jose Altuve signing a 5-year, $125 million extension with the Houston Astros. How'd you feel about this deal when he signed this? What were your thoughts once the numbers dropped?
Yeah, I think it made a lot of sense for both the Astros and Altuve. I don't think when you're talking about what are Altuve's goals moving forward, or what is he looking to accomplish as a major league player for the remainder of his career, I think most of those indicators pointed him back towards Houston. And I don't think the contract number seems to be pretty fair from both sides, and the Astros don't have anybody to immediately replace him. He is still an outstanding baseball player. I was looking it up. After he returned from injury in late July last season, he was, by whatever stat you want to use, basically one of the 3 or 4 best hitters in the American League. He was 335, was second best, 404 on base percentage was 4th. His slugging was 8th, and by Fangraphs WAR, at least, he was the 4th best position player in the AL from that point forward. So he's got a building Hall of Fame case. He's got an outside lower percentage shot at 3,000 hits, and I think his best path towards achieving probably most of his goals career-wise moving forward are staying within the Houston ecosystem. He's never going to be as appreciated on any team that he signs at via free agency as he is in Houston. I can't speak for the guy, but I would imagine that comfort and that legacy are probably worth the potential marginal increase in dollars that he could have gotten somewhere else, but I'm not even sure that's guaranteed either.
Yeah, he had one more year before he would hit free agency, but he's definitely he's been with Houston his entire career. Like you said, it makes no sense to really try and play the market game. He also just doesn't seem like that type of player. If anybody's going to be named the captain of the Houston Astros, it should have been Altuve at this point. He's just an absolute stud, and it makes so much sense. And like you said, securing that legacy, I think, is such a big deal. And there's something so clean about seeing a 5-year deal this offseason with no opt-outs, with no clauses, club options, player options. It is such a clean deal, and it just shows the confidence on both sides. Houston's confidence in Altuve being the player that he's been, especially coming back from that injury as well. And then Altuve's confidence in the Astros that they're going to continue to build a stud of a team as they've shown to do over the past decade. It's kind of the perfect deal at this point. You could argue that he got less money than he deserves, or that he's setting the market back in some way. But I think it's too easy to look at it from our couches and go, he could have gotten more. At this point, does he need more? I don't know.
I mean, really step back and think about it. Like, he signed with the team 17 years ago for very little money at 16 years old, and went through some absolute dog shit years with the Houston Astros, and really has to, like, if I'm him and I'm like one of the guys who pushed from a losing culture into a winning culture that resulted in multiple World Series wins, like
Mm,
I'm I have to feel like I'm part of that fabric, and to
mm,
walk away from that when the city of Houston celebrates you, like literally, there's Jose. I think
mm,
that I saw that there's Jose Altuve Day, that is going to be like a thing in Houston, and like, why would you want to leave that, especially when it's not like other teams could actively have offered him $125 million extension, right? Like that would have had to
mm.
come after his final season played out. Houston was the only team that could offer him this money right now. Makes a lot of
Right,
sense,
right.
and they're
Yes,
looking to still be good. And yes, he's an older player, but he's not done. He's played some of
right.
his best baseball. I brought up what he did after injury. You don't even have to cut
Mm,
it up like that. He was great overall on the season. He was great the season before, and
hmm.
he was rock solid in 2021. So, like,
Yep.
if you throw out the COVID season in 2020, where a lot of very good players had very wonky seasons because it was
Right.
such a small sample, like,
Hmm.
you have basically an uninterrupted run of brilliance that goes back to 2014, really. So a full decade of baseball outside of that 2020 season. So, like,
Yep.
probably a lot of good baseball left. And at 20, what was it, $25 million a pop
Yep.
per season, that's he can meet that pretty easily, I think.
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah, I think him being a part of the fabric of the Astros, that's so true. I mean, being a part of an organization that long, and then, like you said, being with the team as they are going from one of the worst teams in baseball to arguably a dynasty. Um, it's insane. It's absolutely insane. Good for Altuve. Good for him, dude. The Rays have extended some guys of their own. Eric Neander, the president of baseball operations, and Kevin Cash, their manager. How'd you feel about these extensions? They're at least 4 years long, roughly. How do you feel about Neander, Cash? Um, do they stand out to you amongst the other executives or managers?
Yeah, I mean, it's always hard to parse, in front offices, what is the responsibility, and managers for that matter, what is the responsibility of this person and what is the responsibility of, the entire unit, or what decisions are they
Mm,
making? Because a lot of that stuff is essentially not public. But based on
right.
the information that we do have,
Mm,
it would suggest that this is one of the elite front office, head of dugout uh, combinations in the league, has
mm,
been to this point. And given that it's not like either guy is at a point where you would feel like they'd lose their fastball, so to speak, on their respective, arenas of expertise,
mm.
you would think that they would continue to get great value out of these two. So, not surprising. They're both regularly in the conversation for the awards that they're able to win in their roles.
Yep.
And yeah, other than that brief rumor that Kevin Cash was like a possible successor to Francona in Cleveland, which obviously never materialized, and they hired
Right.
Vogt.
Right.
Yeah, seems like a sensible decision for the Rays organization.
Now, as a baseball statistics researcher, and let's just say it what it is, as a baseball nerd yourself, um, how do you analyze managers in this day and age? It not to say who the manager of the year is necessarily, but how do you, I don't know, how do you judge who a good manager is? Like, do you have to watch every single game? Do you have to be in the moment and
Can I
see
be,
what the bullpen decisions like? How do you judge it?
I mean, I don't do so in any way that is comprehensive or
Okay.
like or objective. Really, like I'm not. In no way are my motivations. I'm not paid to look at managers. Nobody's paying me to do that. I To me, it is such a. There's so much stuff that I don't have
Mm,
access to, and that
mm,
would apply to almost anybody who would want to take that sort of idea
yeah.
on,
Sure.
beyond the combination of things that we can all look at if we wanted to, which is What is their level of success as a manager? What does it feel like watching them manage a game? Like, right? So, but beyond those sorts of things, I think it's pretty tough. I think it was very interesting that the Cubs kind of reset the market a little bit this offseason on Craig Counsell, with the idea that not only is he a good or great in-game tactician, but he's also a culture builder, and a guy who's quote unquote going to get the most out of the players or the vast majority of players that he manages. I'm very interested to see how the Counsell experience translates to a new team, because not to say all of these guys are the same, but we've heard about managers who were great culture builders or who had translatable skills or greatness outside of their original environment or something like that. And sometimes that is true, and sometimes they meet that magic moment, and sometimes it's just not once that person leaves that particular environment. Like, think of the way that Joe Madden basically exited baseball discourse, right? It was almost like, punchline is a little strong, but I feel like people had like come to basically be like, this guy's act is kind of clownish and a little tired at this point. And there was an extended period of time where he was considered to be like the most progressive, like forward thinking manager in the game. And it moves very quickly. And he translated his success. To be fair, he translated what he did in Tampa and won a streak breaking World Series with the Cubs. So you can't take that away from him, but it also unraveled pretty quickly after that. It seemed like, in terms of tuning out. So it's just interesting. Like, I don't have a great answer for you other than just kind of subjective feel in watching them. And given that, like, the team that I would get emotionally invested in, so to speak, over the last 10 to 20 years has, for the second half of that decade, or the second part of that 20 years, been managed by Francona. It's not a subject I've given an enormous amount of thought, because I'm not really worried about most of what he does. And if there are in-game decisions that are questionable, like kind of a la carte, that's fine, but that's not fundamentally changing what I think about Francona or somebody like that as a manager, who I can see the effect that he has on or has had on that organization over the last decade.
Yeah. Madden's exit, I believe, was him giving himself a mohawk to fire up the boys. I could be wrong about this. He
was like shown the door like the next day. He did some stunt.
It kind of played out like an Office skit in my head. Just a full bit that Michael Scott would pull off. Just giving yourself a mohawk, and the next day, bro. The next day,
crazy.
I mean, listen, he's just trying to fire up the boys. Like, what are you gonna do? Come on, we've all done a mohawk to fire up our, the guys we're leading.
Except when those players were probably like, "What's this fucker doing?" And then the front office overhears that.
What's your style of leadership?
All right, he's out.
I'm the type of guy that I'll get a mohawk if I need to. We never got to see if it affected the team. Come on, give him a couple games to ride it out a little bit.
That was one stunt too many, it turns out.
Speaking of what people
this guy's straight up out of ideas.
Yeah, he's run out. His animal guy is like on vacation. He's like, what do I do?
Fuck.
What do I
can do this.
He's like going around. Oh my gosh! Have you seen the show? I Think You Should Leave.
Yes, of course.
Okay, when he's making a scene in that party, and he's just like, "What's the next bit do we do?" And this is Joe Madden just going with his guys. He's like, "What do we do, guys? What do we do? Get a mohawk." I think that's it's perfect. Oh man. Speaking of like what you could arguably call, I'll say stunt. What is your official opinion? Speaking of a crazy year in 2020, what's your official opinion on Kevin Cash pulling Blake Snell in Game 6. Where do we stand on that decision?
Yeah. I think it's just safe to say it didn't age well, and that anybody who, yeah, I mean,
Sure.
what's the advantage to being on the pro? He made the right decision call at this point. Like I'm
You're
not
weird and
dying
quirky.
on
You're
the,
different. You know,
yeah,
you're
I'm
built
not
different,
dying
I
on
guess
the
you could say.
hill for Kevin Cash's postseason blunder in 2020. Not sure it would have really
Sure.
turned out any differently in the end,
Fair.
but yeah, it didn't work. Didn't work. And sometimes it's great to play the what did the odds say, or what did the
Mm,
analytics say, and
sure.
you could probably argue that one either direction. They
Right.
have they have information that we don't, and they know things and all that sort of stuff. But
Fair.
sometimes when it's close to a coin flip, um, you play it by the result, and unfortunately, the
Fair.
result was not in his favor that time. However,
Fair.
he has clearly been able to recover his image as a manager, and yeah,
Yes.
I think
Unlike our
there have been
fallen,
worse blunders for sure. Yeah,
right, unlike our fallen clown, our mohawk wearing animal expert,
yeah, yeah.
Mr. Madden.
He'll always have
Th-
2016.
Thank you for your service, sir. And I mean, his career with the Angels was. Anyway, sorry. All right, we're continuing down the line here. Speaking of a former Angel, actually, Billy Epler, he's in the news, man. Getting suspended for the 2024 season. Plus the playoffs as well. So he's out. GM of the New York Mets for tampering with the IL. Is this a Billy Epler problem? Is this baseball finally going, all right, we have a problem? Yeah, like they did with the pine tar. Like, what is this? Is this just? I don't know. What is this? What is this, Justin? What are we doing here?
I think it's pretty easy to, if you want to send a message,
Mm,
and maybe Billy Epler was the most egregious in his violations,
sure.
or perhaps I know I believe Ken Rosenthal noted in the Athletic that
Mm,
there was both regular document and electronic device
mm,
documentation of like the infractions or violations or whatever term you want to
right.
use, which is
Right.
which he noted is extremely unusual
Mm,
um, in an IL like violation kind of accusation,
yeah.
because I guess most people are aware enough to keep it off that sort of stuff. But the I think this is it's really easy for the league to punish a guy who is unemployed. Billy Epler was not employed by any team at the time of his suspension, and he resigned from the Mets. Probably knew
Mm,
something like this was coming, or
mm,
was encouraged by ownership or whatever. Hey, man, it's best if you just kind of get out of the way, because like you're gonna
mm,
get out of the way eventually. So just kind of do it now. But like
mm.
the great thing about suspending a GM who's not employed by any team is that you're not angering any owner by suspending their GM or their president of baseball operations or whatever.
Right.
So it's a perfect needle to thread or whatever, or cop out, whatever you're, if you're pessimist,
Sure.
if you're like
Sure.
whatever, uh, for the league to thread and
Mm,
say, here's the warning shot for all the teams that are doing
right.
this. And if
Right.
you run afoul moving forward, we will come after active GMs or active presidents or whoever is suspected of doing this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Um, and I don't think it's, obviously this is speculation. I think I feel pretty good about what I said up to that point, but like the speculative part about this, of course, is that it's coming at a time where more and more eyes are on injury reporting and injury kind of fudging related to
Mm,
gambling. Money's
mm.
coming into the league. Like Major League Baseball is not the only major sports league that has had to have some sort of reckoning as it relates to injury description or injury accuracy or reporting or whatever.
Sure.
So I don't. I think the gambling influence and money and like the need for some level of like level ground or transparency in that regard is probably
Right.
influencing this a little bit as well. But I think it's
Yep.
fair to guess that Epler was pretty egregious in what
Right.
he did, and I'm not going to say deserved or didn't deserve because I don't really know, but like it's probably not out of hand for MLB to have gone about it this way, but it's very convenient that it doesn't impact any team in 2024.
Right. How do you feel about teams misusing, I say that with quotes, misusing the IL? Um,
I don't really care. I really don't. I really don't.
mm,
Like I care because like I care like generally speaking in the sense that I don't want the game to be engulfed in some sort of controversy that's
mm,
related to like a lack of gambling transparency. Like I think that would suck. So I care about it in that regard. But in terms of the
mm,
amount of thought that I give while I'm enjoying a 100 and really paying attention to a 162 game season, I am giving almost no thought to
what?
like is this IL being properly used unless it's like a totally like nonsense like situation that everybody knows
Sure.
about. Um,
Sure.
I just don't think it's. I don't know. I'm just not worried about it. I'm not. To me, it's not worth stressing about
Yeah.
because it
No,
requires
absolutely.
to some degree player participation,
Oh,
right?
oh, yeah,
Like I mean,
what?
in a lot of
Yeah.
cases, like
Yeah.
or if it does or if it doesn't come with player participation attached,
Right.
like you're presumably going to run into a grievance issue sooner than later, and the problem will kind of solve itself, I would think. But yeah, I don't know. It's not a problem that really concerns me among the many that plague Major League Baseball off and on.
Right. Yeah. And yeah, I think you bring up a lot of good points. The fact that it's not really affecting any team, any major league team, but it is that warning shot. Um, baseball, MLB's decision making has always felt a little all over the place, shall we say, when it comes to when they're going to do something drastic. Um, like I mentioned, the pine tar or spider tack or whatever you want to go with. We'll go with spider tack. Whatever mixture a pitcher wanted to use, the fact that they decided to change that up, in the middle of a season, just felt a little odd. So this could be maybe a progression, hopefully, in MLB's decision making. I don't know. Do I trust them to make the best decision at the best time? Not really. But whatever works for them, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah,
That's
I
that's
mean,
what I'm going with here.
yeah, I don't really think there's a connection between the two, and if they're successful
Right.
in one decision and unsuccessful in another, I think that's pretty typical for the league, I would guess.
Fair. Fair. All right. Next up, Dodgers have re-signed Clayton Kershaw to a 2-year, $10 million guarantee. There are incentives in this deal that could bring the total value up to $25 million for the second year. And then they've also signed Brian Brazier to a 2-year, $9 million deal. Brazier's a very interesting choice. Let's cover Kershaw real quick. Was it inevitable he was just going to go back to the Dodgers? Was there a possibility he'd go to the Rangers? Like, what do you think?
I I guess you'd ultimately he would only know, but to me it always felt inevitable.
Yep.
Uh, this is one that I thought about during the course of the off season, and every time I thought about it, I like put him in his own bucket as opposed to like the other interesting free agents because I was just like,
Right.
yeah, I know there's like been that Texas thing like that's been
Yep.
flirted with off and on, but ultimately it just felt like, and he came out and said it like some to some degree we don't have to speculate. He came out and said
Mm.
like he'd never really dealt with a surgery like the one that he had to deal with,
Mm-hmm.
and that the way that he ended his season in 2023 was just like an unacceptable way for his career or his run to go.
Right.
And I would have to agree that would be a really shitty way for like an inner circle Hall of Fame pitcher to go out. And
Yeah.
um, the Dodgers money doesn't matter. This is certainly a very small amount of money to bring back a franchise legend, and um, I would have been surprised if he went anywhere else. I'd also be surprised if, like, I think expectations need to be like firmly adjusted for what sort of contributions he's going to be making this season. Like, I know the reporting said that late July at the earliest is when
Yep.
he could be expected back.
Yep.
So let's just say it's they're getting him for part of August and September and whatever playoff push they're
Right.
making in October.
Right.
Um, how many innings is that really? Um,
Yeah.
so do I think the innings he provides will probably be pretty damn good? Yeah, because there's no evidence that the innings that Clayton Kershaw doesn't provide or that they aren't good, other than that last
Right.
inning that he provided before the 2023 season ended for him.
Yep.
So yeah, made a lot of sense, and it did feel like an inevitability.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like the incentives. I mean, it depends on how healthy he's going to be. You're right. It's probably just going to be a ramp up in September just to get him ready for the playoffs is my guess. That it
I
seems
mean, what's
about
the
right.
base salary for this season? It's $5 million, right?
5 mil for this
Okay,
season. Yeah.
so like, so what is the expectation when a player signs a 1 year $5 million contract that has an option on the second season that's for like real money?
Yeah.
The expectation is that they're not going to provide much this season, but we'd love
Mm,
to have some level of optionality on them for that next season when they might be healthier. So like,
right.
just because it's Clayton Kershaw doesn't mean that those rules don't apply to some degree. And like, we talked about it on Baseball is Dead. I think like at one point someone like casually said like, well, 100 innings, and it's like, yo, whoa, 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 like there's like no way that can happen. So
Right.
so
No
like
shot.
yeah, so
There's no shot.
I'm looking forward to seeing him get another shot at something of a last moment that's a little bit more memorable, or
Yes.
memorable in a good way.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, there's no reason to think that his performance on the field when he's on the field is going to be any less
Yeah.
than very good to fantastic.
Yep.
He's fantastic. How do we feel about Ryan Brazier here? Split the season between Boston and the Dodgers. The tale of two seasons. I mean, 21 innings with Boston, a 7.29 ERA, 4.38 FIP, and then with the Dodgers was 38 and 2/3 innings pitched, a .7 ERA and a 2.48 FIP. Um, Overall, it's a 3.02 ERA. Like, where is he? Like, where are we at on Ryan Brazier?
Um, I mean, obviously, he's not going to repeat a 0.70 ERA over 38 innings, or really how many ever innings he pitches in 2024. But,
Right.
like, if FIP has a lot of problems with it as a stat, and it's
Yep.
more like a guidepost, let's say. But like, it was 4.35 with Boston and 2.48 with the Dodgers. I think
Mm.
that the 2.48 number is very much repeatable for him as a contributor to the Dodgers bullpen. I think they chose him. They ostensibly chose him over Caleb Ferguson, right? They traded Caleb Ferguson away to
Right.
accommodate
Right.
Brazier. At least that's how it seemed in the reporting and the transactions. I think when you see this level of change in a pitcher's, particularly a relief pitcher's kind of indicators, I think there's
Mm.
probably a lot of stuff here, because he had some
Yep.
good stuff um, going last season.
Right.
Like the slider was particularly nasty, and that
Yep.
was, translatable. Like 32 strikeouts, no homers allowed off the slider last season. So,
Yeah.
with a whiff rate, and that supports the success that he had. So, generally, if the Dodgers get a hold of somebody and they get better, I'm inclined to believe them if they want to bring them back. So yeah, I think I think their bullpen is going to be pretty good, and I think he's going to be a pretty good part of it. Maybe very good.
Yeah. Absolutely. I'm kind of as I, was digging a little bit deeper, I found myself getting more and more in on Ryan Brazier. As soon as he went over the Dodgers, he looks like he learned a cutter, which meant that he could throw his slider and his cutter. They are different pitches from what it seems on Baseball Savant.
Yep.
And then the four seam is his worst pitch. He does throw fast, but it's gets hit very hard. So as the season started to progress, the sliders usage went up, and then he slots in the cutter as well, which meant the fastball can either be, in like that 20 to 30% usage, which I think is exactly where it should be, where players don't get to sit on the fastball. Because if you're not, if your fastball is not dominant enough at strike getting, then why am I chasing the slider? No matter how good your slider is.
Yeah, to your point, 0 homers allowed off the four seamer from June on. So,
Yep.
there was something there that allowed him to, or allowed batters to not sit on it. To your point, so yeah, I think there's enough underneath the hood here to be pretty optimistic about what he's going to bring, in 50 or 60 innings for them in 2024.
Yeah, he also brought up the sinker as well. So it looks like he was definitely, even though seemingly having, being dominant with the Dodgers, he was still kind of manipulating and finding his groove, which I think there'll be a little bit more of that. Like there could be, growing pains as he's kind of changing out the four seam and lessening it as a usage pitch and seeing what he can get called strikes with mainly, so that the slider can still do its whiff dominance. And if anybody's gonna, make a good pitcher, it's the Dodgers.
Yeah,
They know what they're doing.
A lot of success there. Mark
I
Pryor.
think they know what they're doing. I don't know. Just a guess. Just a hunch. What can I say? Let's get into our top 10 second base list here, baby. I'm so interested to see who you have. I'm so excited to compare. I'm also very nervous. It's a very, shall we say, I just feel like I'm exposed to a certain extent. I have to look at a player and put a number next to them and say, you right now are better than this player. And that can be, a little uncomfortable. You'd think I'd be comfortable after 5 years of doing this. All right, number 10 here. JayHay, what do we got? Who's number 10? Who just ekes onto the list here?
I want you to go first.
Oh, my gosh.
It's your podcast.
He's not prepared. That's fine.
No. I got my list right here. No.
I know,
Okay.
bro.
All right.
Saying JayHay is unprepared I think that's an oxymoron.
Yeah,
I don't think that's a thing. I don't. Freaking baseball research statistician. All right, my number 10. Oh boy,
it's tough.
Thairo Estrada on the San Francisco Giants.
What's the quick sell there?
The quick sell is he showed fantastic defense this past year.
Yeah.
He's a good enough hitter. He's got very good speed, 23 steals this past year, and has played back-to-back full seasons and showed consistency. 3.9 WAR this season, 2.8 WAR the season before. He hasn't shown consistently very good defense. It was fantastic per outs above average this past year, 20 outs above average, 100th percentile on Baseball Savant. The year before, he was about average per outs above average. So I'm definitely looking to see consistency there. Defensive stats definitely are a little bit tougher to gauge here, and I'm definitely putting a little bit more emphasis on the defense, say compared to my first base list, obviously. But yeah, I think 14 bombs, 23 steals. He hit 271, 315 on base, 416 slugging. He's good enough.
So here's why I asked the question, mainly because what I found when you said, here's what we're going to do for this podcast, and I was like, well, as to your point, I'm not doing some level of research if we're going to do like a countdown. What I found and what my instinct was going in is that like outside of, I think the top three, if we're including a certain somebody as a second baseman, which these lists seem to be doing, so that's fine.
Yep.
Outside of those players, I think it's a jumble of dudes, and that's particularly true the further you get back into the top 10 or top 12 or top 15, where I think it's really hard to be like, what the fuck are you talking about? What do you mean you've got this guy at 10? He should be number 11. It's like, Well, okay, man.
JayHay, are
Like
you saying this is an unexciting list? Is this what you're
no, it's
saying
not.
right
It's
now?
not. Well, I think you could argue it's either exciting or this makes it more or less exciting depending on your preferences because
Very true.
there's there are a lot of arguments to be made. Like I think you could go maybe 13 or so deep on guys that
Yep.
deserve legitimate consideration for the top 10 and
Yes.
then how you order the guys from like 5 on is like kind of a preference thing as well.
Yes.
So that's kind of my spiel to start this
It's a
off.
great it's a great spiel. I
Thank
loved
you.
it.
Thank you.
I
My
learned
number
a
10
lot.
my number 10 is so maybe going to be a little bit of a player hater stance on
Let's
this,
go.
but like it's a rise.
Ah.
So 354, obviously, like I know the pursuit of 400 last year garnered a lot of attention. Um,
Mm,
why he's, and I know this is second baseman right now, but I'm also trying to think about what these people are actually going to be doing in 2024 as opposed
sure.
to what they did in 2023.
Of
And
course.
I think that was the best extended stretch of baseball that we're ever going to see from Luis Ariz. I think
Mm,
the fact that he ended at 354 speaks to what his production was like basically from May on,
yeah.
or the beginning of June on, and he brings essentially no real defensive value, and in fact, I think can be viewed more as a defensive negative, particularly
Detriment.
when we're talking about some of these other players that he's in contention with. There is no power, but there's incredible bat to ball skills. I'm not going to run through the baseball savant numbers for all of these people, particularly not the number 10 person, but we're obviously talking about one of the people with the lowest strikeout rates and the lowest whiff rates and the lowest in zone whiff rates and the lowest out of zone,
Mm,
like the whole thing.
mm-hmm,
He's a very
mm-hmm,
appealing hitter to watch. I give him credit
mm,
for that. I obviously give him credit for the season that he just put together, which puts him into the top 10 conversation. But to me,
yep.
there's almost no upside remaining in Arias. There's no defensive dynamic element, which that's true of a lot of guys that we're going to get to on my list, probably on yours
Yep.
as well.
Yep.
So that's where I have him at number 10, despite that very sexy 2023 season.
No, I like it. I like it. It's a fun pick. I'll say that. It's a fun pick. I think,
Is he on your list?
he's not on my list.
So he didn't make your list at all.
Did not make my list.
Wow, I thought I was going to be pessimistic putting him at 10. All right. All right.
You know what's the problem here? All right. It's the defense, bro. Like he's just not like it's just hard. It's very hard for me to call him a second baseman. Like it's like he shouldn't be playing second base. There's no world where he should be.
Yeah, I mean, he may not be for very longer, which is,
Right.
that was part of my factoring, like just like kind of
Yeah.
subjectively in putting him at 10, but apparently you're even more pessimistic. All right.
He was very close. He was very close.
Well,
like you
that's
said, I
fine.
mean, the 132 runs created plus, back to back 130 runs created plus years. I love it. Fair enough. Number 9.
All right, I'll go first this time.
Go for it.
All right, so we're gonna go like all the way to the other side, and we're gonna go with we're gonna go with defense here.
Hell yeah.
And it's Nico Horner. Was my number 9. I am a big fan. I think the defense is 100% legit. I think he would be a Gold Glove caliber defender at shortstop. They don't need him to do that on the Cubs because they actually have one of the few people who would be better and is better in Swanson. He is. I'm not like obsessive about threats on the base paths or anything like that, but he was probably the most dynamic regular second baseman on the base paths last season, both in terms of stolen base quantity and efficiency. He had a very high efficiency season as well. His defense grade, as I said, his defense grades out very well. He's got good bat to ball skills, low whiff. I think there's like a half a level more with the bat potentially that I think can go there, and he should still be in his prime defensively. So, like a lot of these guys are going to lean defense first. But I've got Nico Horner at number 9.
Okay, fair enough. This is like you said. It is. I'm not. I can't freak out, which is really depressing. I really want to freak out.
Well, there's room to freak out. at the top of the list, depending on what the order is, maybe. But
That's fair. That's probably
or
when the most
omissions.
debate.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Right. Luis Ariz. Apparently I'm the down man.
So you're out
Yeah.
on Horner too.
No, I'm not. We'll get to Horner.
Okay.
We'll get to him.
All right. Who you got at 9?
Number 9, I got Andres Jimenez.
Yeah. All right. That's about right.
On the Guardians.
Yeah, I have him at 7.
He had an otherworldly 2022. This year, the bat obviously took a big step down. Whether you want to say it was luck or not, I don't really think it was. The exit velocity dropped quite a bit to where you could say, you could point to the BABIP and go, you had a 353 BABIP in 2022, then it was, 289 this past year. That's likely to come up. Not necessarily. I'm a little bit worried about how hard he hits the ball.
Yeah, I know.
It's not a specialty, but you still got to get hits,
Yeah, I know from having looked over the course of the 2023 season that he either finished it was top 3, I believe, if not number 1 in largest year-over-year drop in average exit velocity and hard hit rate and stuff like that. So definitely a real thing going on. What I liked about that's obviously a huge problem, and the fact that he finished 6th in the MVP in 2022. So if we just throw that away for a second and say that's never coming back. What we have in its place is maybe a guy who's like a league average bat, but who is an outstanding defender. And I liked the fact that he responded to what was clearly a much less effective overall offensive season by adding 10 bags, by continuing to play outstanding defense. And again, if you had him at 11 or 12, I wouldn't really argue very much, but I think he's also still a guy with youth on his side, and to assume that, maybe the actual answer here is that he's in between these 2 seasons. And if that's the case, then we're talking about a guy who should be in the top 5 of this conversation as opposed to the back half of the top 10. So we'll see. But that's a lot. There are a lot of questions with these guys, right? Like outside of the top 5 or 6 guys, they all have either they haven't been around that long, or they're extremely dependent on their defense to be considered in the elite conversation. So so I had Jimenez at 7. So we're generally on the same page there.
Okay. I could live with 7. I think he, like you said, he's a stud defender. He's a stud. So there's the consistency there, but there's also a lot of stud defenders on this list, and it's hard to gauge there. I definitely think the ceiling, he's shown the ceiling. Like you said, I don't think he hits that ceiling again. If you compare the 2 years, it really is just 50 points of average. That's really all it is. The power numbers are roughly very close. But like I said, that exit velocity and the hard hit percentage, it's not power necessarily. It's not homers, but it's getting hits that he isn't getting this past year.
But how hard you hit the ball also matters too, because if every ball you hit is 86 miles an hour on the ground, then you know what, man, not a lot of those are getting through. And, Stephen Kwan suffered a similar downturn on balls in play success off of his, stud rookie campaign. And a lot of people were like, hey, this could be a problem. And, then, hey, this was a problem. And it would be nice to see him come back in between the 2.
Yeah, absolutely. Who you got number 8?
I got Matt McClain.
Oh, okay. All right.
I think it's hard to deny what you saw in the rookie campaign. I don't care where he finished in the rookie of the year, but he did finish 5th. You saw a nice blend of power and speed. Obviously, his triple slash line, if that's repeatable over a full season, puts him in a conversation that's an entirely different one than 8th on this list. But, maybe a little bit more than what was expected of him, given that it was basically exactly or very close to his minor league OPS. You don't see many people come up and immediately translate their career minor league numbers into what they're doing in the majors. But he seems to be a real legit piece. And I'm pretty excited. Of all the people that are on this list, I'm probably the most excited to watch him play in
Mm,
2024 because
mm.
outside of the guys that we already know are great, like he's the guy that has by far the most like volatility on where he could go on this list next season. Like if he comes out and says, "Hey, I'm actually like an NL second base all-star candidate,"
Right.
okay, then it'll be fun to do the Around the Diamond podcast episode number fucking whatever you're at that point, and then we can re-rank the second baseman and we can have a
Yeah.
different conversation about Matt McLean.
Right.
I don't feel like anybody else on this list has that sort of potential change
Mm.
year over year in terms of the conversation that we're having. So that's why I have him at 8. Might even underrank him a little bit, but given how I just talked about him, but yeah, that's where I have him.
That's fair. That's very fair. I'm gonna get to him as well.
Okay.
I'm gonna get to him. My number 8 is Bryson Stott on
Yeah.
the Philadelphia Phillies. Fantastic defender, consistent. 3.9 WAR this past season. 101 runs created plus, hits 280, good speed, 31 stolen bases, 15 homers. I think this is very repeatable. Nothing looks out of the ordinary here. He's an average bat with really good defense. Where have I seen this before? Oh, right. Like 5 other dudes on this list. He's good. He's fun. And also, he's so young. I could see him progressing a little bit. He was an amazing hitter in the minors, but he also sped through the minor leagues as well. So I'm kind of curious to see as he matures on the major league team. And yeah, I'm excited to see what we got here.
He was my guy. He was my last cut. So we're not far off there. I kind of view
Yep.
him as like, maybe a little bit, 10% better Horner with the bat, maybe a little slightly less impressive of a defender, at least in my opinion.
Yep.
But yeah, he's the guy I think that I left off. Like I sort of already regret putting Arias instead of Stott at 10. So maybe we can kind of like, we won't change my list, but we can consider that I'm
No.
having those sorts of regrets before the podcast is even over. But yeah, Stott to me was like, it was sort of like Stott Horner. Who am I going to put it at that spot? But I'm with you. I think he's a
Yeah.
nice player, and he's another guy who, maybe we're not talking about him completely differently by next season, but there's still some helium there for a guy who went 15-30 in his age 25.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I couldn't tell you how many times doing these lists that I halfway through, like, oh man, I messed up on that one. There's somebody, oh gosh, why did I do that? Now, and number 7 for you, who was it?
That
Who
was
was it?
Jimenez.
Jimenez. That's a good pick. I mean, he's got the ceiling, and like you said, if he does land in the middle, that's not bad. I like that. I like that. My number 7 is Ha-Seong Kim.
Okay.
On the San Diego Padres. Kind of, what you'd call a breakout year, but not really. The defense is still very good. The bat was a 112 runs created plus, 17 homers, 38 bags. He broke out with stealing wise. And the walk percentage is fantastic, 12% walk percentage as well. He's a good hitter.
He's my number
And
6.
he's done it before. I mean, 2022 was better than I think people give it credit for.
Yeah, he's my 6. So we're right on
He
that.
is.
I also like his
Oh.
defensive versatility. He's not just a second baseman. Like, he gave the Padres some real time at third and short, which, we're ranking second baseman, so that's where the focus is. But if you have the ability to play other positions, that only makes you more valuable. To your point, like, yeah, I think 2023 was the season where he kind of got the attention for being a good player. Not enough attention, because I know there were periods of time where, like, depending on what leaderboard you were looking at, it's like, wait, who leads baseball in wins above replacement? Like, there was a point where Ha-Seong Kim led all of baseball in, I think, B-WAR at some point, like a couple months into the season, and it was like, holy shit.
Yeah.
Which, whatever, that didn't end up being the case and probably shouldn't be the case, but he was a legitimate Gold Glove winner. He got MVP consideration. He was basically just as good, to your point, in 2022. So we have 2 full seasons, because both of those were full, robust 150-plus game seasons for him, of borderline star level, down ballot MVP production. And his 2021 season, his debut season, it's not like his defense was still considered to be outstanding that season. His bat just took a little while to cook. But even with that substandard offensive line, he was still a net positive contributor for the Padres in 21. So
Right.
he's still in his prime. Is he going to get better than he was last season? I don't know. But like, there's almost a sense that we could, if this was, I don't know, man, if you played in a different market, or if the way his production what came was a little bit different, maybe we would like the fact that he's at 6 and 7 on these lists is almost like we're almost bucking the stats to put him there. But it
Right.
also at the same time feels like we're giving him credit for how good I don't know. It's tough because
Yeah,
he's a very unique player.
absolutely. Number 6, real quick, Nico Horner for me.
Yeah. Oh,
Um,
okay. Nice.
he's top tier defensively, man, and there's something to be said about consistency. Back to back years, 4 WAR in 2022, 4.7 this past year in Fangraphs WAR. He's steals are consistently there, but he did up the steals like you mentioned, and next to no power, but he hits for average. He does what Andres Gimenez was unable to do this past year,
Yep.
and have a passable exit velocity to get those singles, to get those things that he can squeeze out for doubles, and just get on the bases and go nuts, man. Absolutely.
I love the love. Yep.
Yeah, he's a lot of fun. It's in essence, this is how this bottom half of this list is. But now we're getting into the interesting bits here. Before we get into the top 5, I got one pick here that I think will be on the list next year. On my list personally is Matt McLain. Just fantastic rookie year. I think a couple things that drew me back. The K percentage is a little high. You always see it as a young rookie. I want to see what the sophomore season is.
Yep.
He also had a 385 BABIP. I'm not saying he's not going to be a high BABIP guy, but I just don't know anybody besides Brandon Marsh that's going to be able to hold a BABIP that high. Or Luis Arraez, I guess you could argue as well. But McLain, like you said, amazing rookie year. And I can't wait to see what he does. He's going to be so much fun. And maybe one of the more underrated guys on the Reds right now. I love that he made it on your list, though. He's definitely going to be on mine next year, or I really, really hope. I really hope he just progresses.
We'll see. We'll meet back and talk about Matt McLain. We could do a whole Matt McLain podcast.
Hell yeah. Do you want to start a whole new podcast? Let's
just
restart.
A Matt McLain. Yeah.
I love it. Do you have a guy that you think is not on your list right now, but could be next year? Little excitement pick, maybe?
That's a good question.
Is Stott making on the list next year?
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's the best answer, which is not particularly exciting because I just said he's like 11th on the list, and but yeah, I think he's, as I said, I'm having regrets. So I don't like really any of the other candidates that are projected to get like for sure playing time this season. Obviously, somebody's going to break out somewhere, but kind of need to see it first, I think.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's tough. I kind of stole the best pick in McLain. I'm sorry. I didn't mean.
I should have saved him.
I didn't mean to do that.
Sneaky pick. Yeah.
He's good. He's good enough to be on the list, but like I'm just gonna save him for
maybe
next year.
Maybe some superstar will just randomly decide that they're going to be a second baseman again.
Maybe I don't know what you're referencing to, but I don't know. Maybe that'll come up later. I don't know. I guess we'll see. You want to start with your number 5 here?
Yeah, I think I saw that there was some pretty serious social traction on his omission from the actual MLB list. I don't understand how Ozzie Albies didn't get credit. I know, like the seesaw nature of his last 4 seasons or so is a little bit weird, but one of those is obviously COVID, and it's not like he was bad that season. He's got basically one genuinely disappointing season on the resume, and that was 2022. And again, that was explained at least in part by injury issues. He has is he a perfect player? No. But he is an excellent player, and he provides an unusual amount of pop at the position in an era where, there isn't an enormous amount of home run hitting or slugging coming out of the position outside of the top 1 or 2 guys. He's coming. It's not like he's coming off some season where his value, it's not like this is the 2022 list or something. Like he's coming off a year where he had 33 homers and had an 849 OPS, 124 adjusted OPS. It doesn't really matter. Like was solid was in this conversation. If you want to look at wins above replacement, like Fangraphs had him as one of the six second basemen at 4 WAR or better. So it's not like
Mm-hmm.
this is crazy to put him at 5. I think it was crazy to leave him off, and I don't,
Yes.
other than like, engagement trolling or something like that. I don't really understand what that was about. So I got Albies at 5.
I appreciate you being honest. I'm going to expect you to bring a lot of listeners, and I kind of wish you did, leave him off your list or something. I'm just thinking about the content. I'm just thinking about the content. That at the end, that's. I, I understand what you're doing, and maybe I'm being selfish. Whatever. Anyways, Ozzy Albies is my number 4.
Okay.
He got the bump for me.
I wonder if we have 4 and 5 flipped. Yeah.
It's very possible. It's very possible. I'll just say one thing about Albies. I don't think the defense is as bad as it showed this past year. I think he's better than this. I think he's shown consistently to be average to better defensively. This past year was -6 outs above average, which is second percentile, one of the worst graded defensively per range. Obviously, you don't need the arm for second base, so I haven't really dove into those stats. But I don't think he's this bad defensively. And with the bat that he carries, I think this is him going forward. At least a 120 runs created plus with the power and the speed. He doesn't strike out very much at all. The isolated power 233. Like you said, power for a guy of his size and at this position, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
I think 2022 is an anomaly. I don't think that's going to happen again. I think his defense is going to rebound, and I think this is him as a hitter. And I think that's deserving of number 4. Maybe as I was ranking this list, I saw a lot of defensive guys. I think offense is the more valuable asset, but I also don't want to discount defense. And he did rank very terribly defensively this past year, so I can understand maybe the little flip flop with my number 5, who is Ketel Marte.
Yeah.
Flip flopped.
Yeah, I had him at 4. I think he's coming off of if I had to pick which of those seasons I would have rather had Ketel Marte or Albies 23 by the slimmest of margins, I would have gone with Ketel. I think again a little bit of a challenging player to peg to a specific value over the last half decade or so, because his seasons have been so weird and so different.
Yeah.
Like when he kind of broke out in like kind of onto the stage in 2018, like he led the league, like he did a little bit of everything. Like he led the league in triples. He had, 14 homers, 26 doubles, and like a 768 OPS. So like he was a solid offensive player, but was, it's kind of rare to see a guy lead the league in triples while only stealing 6 bags, by the way. But, and then in 2019, he was like a completely different offensive force and was a legitimate MVP candidate and received MVP votes. And then, since that season, you've had basically everything in between. You've had a great approximation of that season in 21.
Right.
You've had a season much, much more like his 2018 and 2022, and then you had something in between this season. And the fact that he kind of established an in-between level, I think, is encouraging. That he got back to 25 homers, which is second most to his 2019 number.
Yeah.
I think Marte's got a nice runway here of 3 to 4 years where he's going to continue to be an extremely valuable player. But the 4 or 5 conversation between him and Albies to me is 6 of one, half dozen of the other. And I don't think either one of them has a real argument inside of the top 3. And I don't think either of them should be outside of the top. If you wanted to put Kim in with these guys, that's fine. But I don't think either of those two should be outside of the top 6. So to me, like there's not a ton of wiggle room there.
Right. They're so close. They're so close. And I will say, I do agree. I think Ketel did have the better 2023. I might be overrating Albie's career overall. I think I'm a little tantalized by the power and the legitness of said power, as well as the steals staying with him as well. But Marte, a big difference. I mean, it's like almost 4% difference in walk percentage in Marte's favor. I think that just provides such consistency with him as a player that he doesn't have to rely on his bat to ball skills as much as Albies does. But Albies has also shown the ability for the bat to ball skills while also having better power than Marte. I think I was a little scared off by the 2022, especially for Marte. I think he's just a little bit less of a consistent player as I look at his, his career so far
Yep.
compared to Albie's. So
Yep.
I was kind of betting on Albie's going forward. That was kind of my difference maker there. Um, but like you said, I mean, we're splitting hairs, baby. This is what lists are about. Come on. All right, number 3 here.
Sorry,
JayHay, do you want me to go? Do you want me to go? Are you okay?
Yeah,
Are you okay right now?
I just wanted you to see that I have to go in like 5 minutes, just so you know.
Hell yeah.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
Let's do it. Marcus Semien is my number 3.
Ooh, okay, we got another disagreement then. That's good.
Let's go.
I had Semien at 2 and Altuve at 3.
You got Altuve? What do you got?
I'm assuming you have Betts at 1, right?
I got Betts at 1, yeah.
Okay, so I got Semien at 2 and Altuve at 3. You could go either direction on this for me. Like Marcus Semien to me was he was the better player because he played a more complete season in 2023. Fair. I don't think he was necessarily the better player on a rate perspective. But like, I don't know, man. Like I it's tough, right? Because one of these guys is going to, as we talked about earlier, is going to be a Hall of Fame candidate. And I don't think Marcus Semien is going to get enough juice to really ever get there. But like his combination of power and competent speed and defense has just been so much more durable as he has progressed over the years and into his Texas contract than I ever anticipated being. And I love where his strikeout rate is going. Like it just keeps going in the right direction. After, spiking a little bit there in that 2020 season. I think that's super encouraging as he gets older, and he hasn't, I don't think he's ever going to hit 45 homers again. But the fact that he can be like a 5-6 win player hitting 20 plus homers, I think is really encouraging. So again, this is the same thing with Albies and Marte, where if you flip these guys, I'm not going to get mad about it. And obviously, as I alluded to earlier, when Altuve came back from injury, he was a superior player to Marcus Semien. But I think Semien's track record over the last half decade is just, about as good as anybody who has not actually won an MVP as exists over that stretch. So that's
fair.
Yeah.
He had a better 2023 than Altuve, I will say. I just think there's the only way he has a better year than Altuve is if Altuve gets injured, and the injury being a fluke hit by pitch on the wrist. Like it just, Altuve's so freaking consistent. I believe in the bat so much more. I understand Semien because the defense, is so locked down. He's the best at the position per defense. I just went with Altuve because of the consistency of the bat. Absolutely. Number 1.
I mean, he crashed the list, right? He ruined it for all of the other second basemen.
He's the new kid. It's like he's like an 8th grader that got held back in middle school, and you're just like, dude, you're not supposed to be here. Like, why are you in this group? Are you in the wrong class? Like, what happened? Mookie Betts, bro. Ridiculous.
I'm interested to see, like, what. I'm assuming it's going to be a real thing. Like he was a real thing last year. Like I know he played more in right field last year than he did second base, but it's not like he played like 6 innings at second base or something like last season. He was a real second baseman.
Like 400 and something innings. Yeah.
Yeah. And his production like didn't waver in those games. So it's not like in fact, by some measurements, they were better in those games than he was in right field. I'm not putting a lot of stock in that, but I am putting stock in the fact that like at least he wasn't negatively impacted by that switch. And he's a plus defensive player at second base. He's a plus defensive player in right field. I've looked at all the lists as to where Mookie ranks on certain stuff through his certain age among right fielders over certain time periods. And if there's anybody listening who doesn't understand that Mookie Betts is a legendary outfielder, historically in the context of the game, like you need to appreciate that now. And it's very cool that he's moving to second base in what is still the prime of his career. Like he was finished second in the MVP last season. And I am interested to see like what period of time does he spend playing? Like, are we talking about the next decade? Or sorry, the next half decade? I
Yeah,
shouldn't say
right.
decade. Are we talking about the next 3
Yeah,
to 4 years, next 5 years? Is
right.
this a 2024 only thing, and then he's going back to the outfield? Is it dependent
Mm,
upon what the Dodgers roster looks like in a given season?
right.
Um,
And what a value to have if that is the case. Like
yeah,
a top tier right fielder and presumably a top tier second baseman.
yeah.
Um, insane.
It can only enhance
Absolutely
his
insane.
greatness. And I think it's
Yeah.
going to be a cool thing to watch play out. And it's like it makes the debate for the top 10 second base list starts at number 2 because one of the 3 or
Right.
4 best players in the game decided that he's now a second baseman. So sorry.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, yeah, absolutely, dude. JayHay, thank you so much for doing this, dude.
No, it's
Run
great.
through your list real quick,
Yes, of
10
course.
through 1. Let's hear it again.
Arise / Bryson
Mm-hmm.
Stott at 10, Nico Horner at 9, Matt McLean at 8, Andres Jimenez at 7, Ha-Sung Kim at 6, Ozzy Albies at 5, Ketel Marte at 4, Jose Altuve 3, Marcus Semien 2, and Mookie Betts number 1.
I love it, dude. I love it. Where can people find you? Where can people listen to your voice, read your words? What do we got here?
Check me
Plug
out
yourself.
on the Baseball is Dead podcast with Carabas, Dallas Braden, and Joey and Jake. We have a great
I love
time
it.
doing once a week, released every Monday. We'll be back to multiple episodes once the season kicks into gear, probably in spring training at some point. And then if you like tweets that are loosely about baseball,
Stats.
and stats, yeah,
Nugs.
check me out at JayHay Kid on Twitter. But other than that, I appreciate you having me on the pod,
Absolutely,
and
dude.
I hope we do it again.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love it, dude. Have a good one, all right, dude?
You too, buddy. Thank you.
All right. Bye. All right, guys. JayHay on the pod. I love it. I'm going to run through my list real quick. Number 10, Tyro Estrada. Number 9, Mr. Andres Jimenez. Number 8, Bryson Stott. Number 7, Ha-Seong Kim. Number 6, Nico Horner. Number 5, Ketel Marte. Number 4 is Ozzy Albies. Number 3 is Marcus Semien. Number 2 is Jose Altuve. And number 1 is Mr. Mookie Betts. Fantastic list. I love having JayHay on the pod, bro. It was fantastic, guys. Make sure to go leave a 5-star review, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. I appreciate it. Let me know what you like about the show. And I'll see you guys back next week, posting every single Tuesday. Have a good one.